Ever heard of those invisible monsters in the sky that pilots have to deal with?
Oh, you mean like wind shear?
Yeah, wind shear.
Yeah.
That's what we're diving deep into today, a weather phenomenon that can make any pilot sweat.
Rightfully so. It's a silent threat that can really ruin your day up there.
We've got these excerpts from in like a lion, remote sensing and wind shear
Okay.
by William L. Weaver.
Interesting.
This was published on Medium's TLDR Innovation.
Okay.
And it basically tells us how we've gone from like the basics of wind shear detection to some super high-tech stuff that's keeping our flight safe.
Yeah.
But before we go there, let's break down why wind shear is a big deal in the first place.
So picture this.
Okay.
You throw a pebble into a pond, right?
Yeah?
You see the ripples going out, those waves.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like wind shear. It creates these sudden shifts in wind speed and direction, like completely out of nowhere.
Okay, I think I get it. But I'm imagining turbulence. You know those bumpy patches you get on a plane?
Ah, I see where you're going, but they're not quite the same. Turbulence can be caused by a bunch of things: jet streams, mountains, even other planes.
Oh.
Wind shear is different. It's not just bumpy, it's a rapid, and I mean really rapid change in the wind, almost like hitting a patch of ice while you're driving.
So it's not just a bump in the road. It's like, whoa.
Exactly. And when a pilot is trying to land a plane, that sudden change can be, well, disastrous is an understatement.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I'm guessing there have been some, well.
Let's just say, between 1964 and 1985, wind shear was a major factor in accidents that led to 500 deaths and 200 injuries.
Wow, that puts it into perspective.
And the real danger is how these wind shifts mess with a plane's lift.
Lift?
Yeah, you know, the force that keeps the plane in the air.
Right, of course.
So imagine a plane is about to land, right? And it runs into a headwind that actually helps the plane, gives it more lift.
Okay, I didn't know that.
But then, all of a sudden, the wind changes direction. Now the plane is hit with a tailwind, which does the opposite. It reduces lift.
And if the pilot can't react quickly enough...
It can be really, really bad.
So knowing how dangerous it is, how did we even start dealing with this invisible threat?
Well, the first systems were ground-based.
Okay.
The FAA developed something called the Low-Level Wind Shear Alert System, or LLWS.
LLWS. Catchy. So how did it work?
Think of it like a bunch of weather stations placed around an airport. These stations, they measure wind speed and direction, and they send that information to the control tower.
Okay.
And if they detect wind shear, air traffic controllers would manually alert the pilots.
So like having a heads up from the ground.
You got it.
Okay.
It was better than nothing, but it had some serious limitations. For one, it was only useful near airports.
That makes sense.
And remember that manual communication we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, that could take up to 2 minutes, which in those situations is a really long time.
2 minutes could be the difference between landing safely and, well.
Exactly.
So we needed something faster with a wider range.
Yeah.
And that's where radar comes in, right?
You got it. And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm ready.
So you've got these advances in radar technology, data, and digital processing.
Mm-hmm.
They totally changed how we detect wind shear. Instead of relying on the ground, now we could put the eyes in the sky on the plane itself.
Wow.
So we started seeing forward-looking wind shear radar, or FLWR.
FLWR. Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like a game changer. So what were these FLWR systems like? Some bulky high-tech thing?
Well, not as bulky as you'd think.
Oh, okay.
2 big players came out on top. You had the RDR-4B
Yes.
that was developed by Allied Signal Aerospace. They're Honeywell now. And then you had the WXR-700
So-
from Rockwell Collins.
Yeah, big names in aviation for sure.
Yeah.
But I gotta be honest, how it all works is still kind of fuzzy for me.
Sure.
Could you break it down? How does FLWR actually work?
So at the heart of it, FLWR uses Doppler radar. You familiar with those like colorful maps they show on the news, you know, where you can see the rain moving around?
Yeah.
That's Doppler radar.
Right.
It doesn't just tell you how far away something is.
Right.
It also tells you how fast it's moving towards or away from the radar.
Oh, okay, I see.
And that's the key here.
But how do we go from raindrops to, like, knowing about wind shear?
Well, think about it. Wind carries the rain, right?
Yeah.
So by measuring how fast the raindrops are moving and in what direction using the Doppler effect,
Okay.
the FLWR system can actually put together a picture of the wind patterns ahead of the airplane.
So it's like giving the plane X-ray vision to see the wind.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
That's really cool.
These systems are really amazing. We're talking up to a 320 nautical mile range.
Wait, 320 nautical miles? That's like, what?
That's almost 370 regular miles.
You're telling me a pilot in like New York City could know about wind shear near Boston.
Potentially, yeah. It's all about staying ahead of the curve.
That's incredible.
It is.
But how fast can this thing process all that information, from that far away?
That's where those digital signal processors, the DSPs, come in.
Yep.
They're the brains of the operation, crunching through all that data in real time,
Okay.
and then they display it for the pilots right there in the cockpit.
So is it like those NextRad images you see on the news?
Yeah.
With all the different colors?
Yeah, very similar.
Showing I don't know, rain intensity or whatever?
Exactly, but instead of just showing how hard it's raining, it shows wind speed, wind direction, and it really highlights those dangerous wind shear patterns in a way that's easy for pilots to understand.
Okay, I see.
Right there in front of them.
It's really amazing we can process so much information so fast and give pilots that life-saving information.
It is pretty incredible how far we've come.
But I'm sure it wasn't all easy developing this tech, right?
You're right. There were definitely some bumps along the way.
Like what were some of the challenges?
One of the biggest was dealing with something called ground clutter.
Ground clutter.
Yeah, it's kind of what it sounds like when
know.
the radar beam hits the ground,
Okay.
especially during landing when the plane's nose is dipped down.
Yeah.
It can create these reflections that mess with the wind shear detection.
Oh, I see.
Imagine trying to have a conversation at a rock concert.
It's
Yeah.
just too much noise.
Too much interference.
Yeah.
So how did they fix that?
That's what's really cool about this, how different companies came up with these clever solutions. Honeywell, for example.
Okay.
They combined their FLWR system with something called EGPWS, their Enhanced Ground Proximity Warning System.
EGPWS, that rings a bell. Isn't that the system that warns pilots about mountains and stuff?
It's like this database of terrain data.
Okay.
And by combining that with GPS data and knowing where the plane's going, they could automatically adjust that radar antenna
Okay.
to keep it focused above the horizon and minimize those ground reflections.
So the radar knows where the ground is and adjusts itself.
Pretty much.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really innovative stuff. But Honeywell wasn't the only one doing cool things.
Right.
Right. What about Rockwell Collins?
Oh, they had a completely different approach. They went with an array antenna, could scan multiple elevations at the same time.
Oh, so instead of just tilting it,
Exactly.
they gave it multiple viewpoints.
Yeah, like having multiple sets of eyes,
Really?
looking out in different directions, so it could filter out the ground clutter but still give accurate wind shear data.
That's really clever.
Yeah, it was a pretty neat solution.
It's amazing how they tackled the same problem in such different ways.
Yeah, it's a testament to how innovative these companies were.
But at the end of the day, it's all about safety, right?
Absolutely.
And by fixing that ground clutter issue, they made FLWR even better at keeping us safe.
Absolutely. And the best part is these systems just keep getting better.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Today's systems are way ahead of what we've been talking about. Better resolution, faster, and the algorithms are even smarter now.
Makes you wonder what they'll come up with next.
Right.
It's crazy to think we've gone from those basic systems on the ground to having all this information hundreds of miles ahead.
It's remarkable how far we've come in such a short time.
It really is.
And it all comes down to data, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. All this data from all these flights, it's got to be a goldmine for, understanding weather.
It's not just about keeping planes safe in the moment.
Right.
It's about the bigger picture, understanding how wind shear forms, where it's most likely to happen, even predicting other severe weather.
So every flight is contributing to this massive real-time weather database.
Exactly.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. And as we get even better at analyzing all that data, who knows what we might discover?
It could change everything from aviation to,
to everyday life, really.
this has been an amazing deep dive. We've covered so much.
It's been a pleasure.
From the dangers of wind shear to how we detect it to the future of weather forecasting.
That's fascinating stuff.
It really is. But before we go, I have one last question for our listeners. We've seen what this tech can do for aviation, but where else could this kind of thinking be useful?
Good question.
Real-time data, analysis, rapid response? Where else could that be a game changer? That's something to think about.
Definitely.
Till next time, keep exploring.